Hello. This video, I'm just going to show you how I use Desmos to introduce linear equations. I also use this same thing as I'll show you later on with the different topics, how I introduce each of the different functions. So not only do I use this with linear equations, but then with absolute value, with quadratics, circles, so forth. I use basically the same type of introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and show you. So the first thing that I would have kids do is type in their y equals x as their parent function, and we would talk about the fact that it has a slope of 1, that it has a intercept at 0, 0 at the origin. But then what I start having them do is take this graph and we start looking at, okay, what happens if I add a 1 to it? What did it do? So always have them leave the parent function on there so that I tell them that's what they're comparing it to. What did it do? And so they start looking at it, and hopefully they see that it moves it up. And then we do 2, and then again I just have them start going through the pattern as to what happens, and up 3. And so we start talking about, okay, if in fact then we look at it in terms of our y equals mx plus b, our slope-intercept form, then that value, the +1, the +2, the +3, starts being our y-intercept. And so we look at that at each point. And so they start noticing that. And then, of course, we go down and we put x minus 1. And then we talk about, was their prediction that they had at the beginning true? And then we do minus 2. And then I have them, okay, well, what if it was a minus 4? What would you expect it to happen? Or what if it was a plus 5? So we do that with the b, and then they start seeing that that value is actually their y-intercept. And then, of course, the next thing that we start looking at is what happens if we put a 2 in front, or what happens if we put a 3 in front. And then they start seeing that we are changing our slope and that it's getting steeper every time. And then we start talking about what if it is a 1/2 x. See? And then, of course, if they don't have a concept of fractions, sometimes this part gets a little bit confusing for them, or a 1/4. So then we talk about how the m value of our slope-intercept form is our slope, and that's what's changing. And then, of course, I have them take all of that, and then we put in our negative on there and see that it, in fact, looks exactly the same. It's just a reflection. It now has a -1 slope. And so then we start talking about, okay, what if it has a -2? I also have them look at, okay, what would be the difference between a 2x and a -2x? And hopefully most of them see that the slope is the same. It's in just the direction. One's going up and one's going down. And so those are the kind of things that I do, is I just have them look, and it's just a comparison. And so they're not actually writing a whole lot of values. It's just a matter of comparison. What's happening to the graph? And so they in themselves are seeing that the y equals mx plus b is the y-intercept and the slope and so forth. Now, of course, you could, and I don't tend to do this as much as probably I should, but a lot of people use these sliders. And so when you want to look at the slope, and that's also a good way to do it. And I do sometimes, but when I'm introducing it, I like them actually typing in the equation versus doing the slider. But the slider would work the same way. And then you could also do your plus b and add your slider there and see what it does to your graph. So you really have two different options. I like them actually physically typing in the equations, but then afterwards you could even add this as an extra step on there. Okay, let's look to see, is that true, what that happens. So that's how I kind of use Desmos as introducing linear equations.